Hi, I'm Jennifer England, here on the traditional territories of the Kwanlin Dun First Nation and the Tan Kwachan Council, and I am the host of Weave, an opportunity for you to deepen the thread of your own inner growth with leadership and systems change. And today I'm having Lisa Gibson and Brooke McNamara join me again for a second conversation. They both host Women's Ritual of Renewal, seasonal online gatherings for a year of wholehearted living. They're two both deep, smart, generous and brilliant women, both who come from different angles of the same thing. Brooke from more of the creative artistry side, and Lisa from the social change leadership side. Brooke McNamara is an artist, a teacher, a Zen monk, and a poet with her most recent publication, Bury the Seed, in 2020. She's also been a teacher at Naropa University and collaborates on incredible spaces for creativity and growth, as well with her partner, Lauren Beale. Lisa Gibson is a transformative coach, facilitator, and systems change consultant focused on leadership development and mindfulness and multi-stakeholder engagement. She is the founder and instructor of the Social Innovation Certificate at Simon Fraser University. And so on this conversation today, what we talk about is celebration and beauty. And you might be thinking, why this in the context of leadership and systems change work? But Lisa and Brooke take us through their own experiences with beauty and why it's so important to pay attention to the experience and moments where beauty, in not just its traditional forms of like, ooh, that's delightful, but also the difficult, the heartbreaking, and the grotesque aspects of beauty, and how and where we can as leaders open up more fully to that moment to moment to see what shifts not only in ourselves, but in our relationships and with the wider world and systems that we're longing to change. We talk about 3 essential components of celebration. We also explore micro moments, all the little moments where we can often just cruise by, but instead what happens when we slow down and pay attention, and what happens when our awareness and our bodies experience deeper integration. We also talk about 2 key practices that for Lisa and Brooke are really essential for being able to open up into beauty and celebration. And then finally, I lead us through a practice we do live together. So I hope you enjoy that. And we end there with powerful and potent practice for bringing beauty and celebration as one of renewal. And I know that we need this more than ever in our world. So thank you for being here. If you love this, please share with your networks, with your community, and on social, and enjoy. Hello, Brooke and Lisa. Welcome again to Weave. So good to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us back.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jennifer. It's an honor to be here.
Our first conversation was so good that I wanted to have you back again, because I've been in love with this idea of renewal and in the spirit of how you've been working with it in so many different ways, often how we don't typically think about it. And so I know that you have a beautiful June retreat coming up, and it's spring, summer in the Northern Hemisphere, and you've been kind of in love with this time of blooming. And so you've decided to focus on celebration. And I'd love you to just explore with us, how are you holding celebration, and why is it so important to offer a space that honors that right now?
Do you want to go ahead, Brooke?
Sure, I'm happy to start. Yeah, we're the arc of the year, the overarching theme is renewal and rituals of renewal. And so we've been tracking the seasons, like you mentioned, and summer feels like, if we align with what's happening in the natural world, there's momentum and life force moving, like you said, into full bloom. And when we get to June, in the Northern Hemisphere, things will be really radiant and potent and alive, and we can't help but feel that on our interior too. Most of us, when we tap in and tune into nature, we can feel that aliveness and that fullness and radiance and beauty, different forms of beauty, like obvious or traditional forms of beauty in the colors and in the shapes of the flowers, and then also the more maybe grotesque forms of beauty and non-traditional forms of beauty, the deeper layers, the darker layers, and really the sense of directness and aliveness and vitality that tuning into the full range of what beauty is can gift us. So yeah, this particular June retreat, we're centering on the art of celebration. And when we tune into that beauty, what we're intending for this group and for this space is that there's this a renewal through, for me, there's three essential ingredients. There's the sense of appreciation and gratitude and praise that comes when we connect to beauty. And again, like the pretty beauty and the ugly beauty, all of it in nature and in this moment indoors and in any given moment. When we tune to the full range of beauty, there can be this natural upwelling of appreciation and praise and gratitude, which is inherently renewing. And then we're also aiming to include this quality of release that beauty can provide, and that that we hope to facilitate for folks, especially because the past year and a half, the whole experience of the pandemic and heightened tensions, a lot of people I know and that Lisa and I work with are just feeling tired and stressed and strained. And so we'd like to facilitate and offer a space where people can rest, but also experience release. And I think sometimes when we're seeking release, it can come out in unconscious ways that are actually destructive and create more stress and strain and fatigue in the long run. So what are the forms of release that actually create real renewal and are and contribute to sustaining us, and that we can experience together, so they strengthen connection? So appreciation, release, and then play. And play is one of those things that's such a medicine, because it doesn't have anything to do with figuring anything out. We don't have to have anything figured out to play. We can simply allow our innate childlike vitality to move through us into movement, dance, playful forms of conversation, etc. So I think when those three ingredients are together, play, praise, and release, we can come out on the other side a little lighter, a little, having put down some of our burdens together. And I think doing that together in an intentional space is super necessary right now. I long for it. So we want to offer that to others.
I love that premise. And as you talked, I could just notice my own body feeling relaxed, the shoulders dropping, but also my own innate after such a long winter. I live in the Yukon, so we have almost 7 months of winter, and it just feels like such the metaphor for the weight and the burden of such dark times, and how much we bear on our own internal landscape with that. So thank you for that gorgeous introduction to this next theme. Lisa, would you like to pick up on anything that Brooke said that you want to deepen?
Yeah, what comes up? I think there's a way in which the quality of celebration is on behalf of our collective well-being as well. So there is something about that the act of there is always something to celebrate. So can we actually find that even the impermanence? And so when you were speaking, Brooke, there was a couple things that came to mind, and I spend a lot of time in front of my computer, a lot of time. Here I am every day, a day after day. and, and that's hard in a lot of ways. So, but one of the beautiful things has been that I go for walks around my neighborhood, and I don't know that spring was more beautiful this year, but it was like kind of out of control. And there's these magnolia trees. And I think I sent you pictures, Brooke. Like I would walk by these trees and like magnolia, like they're incredible. They're like, the kind of, yeah, like the outrageousness of the shape of the blossoms, Yeah. And so they're so beautiful, but they're not there for very long. Mm-hmm. And then they're gone. And now, that the tree is in full bloom. And I forgot that is what magnolia trees look like when they're just have leaves on them. And the leaves are nice and they're, fresh and lime green, but it's like, oh, that beauty, that like those blossoms were only there for just this moment. And they're just part of this cycle. So there's something for me about, like it's celebrating the cycles, which are about, birthing and dying in many ways. And it's like both literal and metaphorical. And so I feel like through the pandemic, there's been lots of these little cycles, and there's like, and there's been literal people that I've lost, through the pandemic. And there's like just ideas of myself or work contracts or things like that. But there's something about that, these cycles and taking pause to actually celebrate the beauty and the beauty that's even contained in the heartbreak. Mm-hmm. For me is actually a really important act of like if we start to look at sort of the difficult moments of this pandemic, it's also, I miss deeply the friends and that like the relationships that I do have, or I miss a person. And so the grief and is for actually something that beautiful that I don't have contact with right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's something about the cycles of but taking the time to celebrate, which is to mark the moments in our lives and on the micro level, as well as, yes, the rites of passage that we might go through in our lifetime. But I'm really interested in how do we create rituals, these small rituals, because they are renewing, because they allow release and invite a new form to take place. So these beautiful leaves are the new form of, the magnolia blossoms, which is the new form of the bare branches, so.
Beautiful. I love that you're emphasizing the micro moments of beauty, because my experience and so many leaders who are supporting, social change work and environmental change making, feeling so wrought with how hard it is in a way to connect with one another in order to move and create social change, because there's been so much focus on just the pandemic that sometimes everything else can feel a little bit harder. And that when that weight gets so much to bear, I'm curious whether, in your experience personally, and also in your circles of creatives and social change makers, what kind of moments of beauty are you witnessing and experiencing in the everyday?
I can start. I have a sort of simple answer, which is that, like Lisa, I'm online a lot for my work and teaching courses around creativity and meditation and poetry. And what I see, I'm surprised. I'll say I'm surprised that people keep coming back. I always thank them for continuing to come to these classes, because typically spiritual practice and creative practice are not what people put at the forefront and invest their time and energy and attention into. Some people, yes, but I'm finding more people coming, and it surprises me. But then I realize that people are so hungry for beauty and for connection and for release. And so what I see in the people that come consistently is that the micro beauty that is nourishing them and creating a way to move forward in wholeness and in community are their own small creative acts and their own kind of spontaneous insights simply from showing up, simply from writing something down, getting still, harmonizing, listening, and writing something down, and then beauty emerges. It's just what happens when people are willing to do these kinds of practices together. And then when they share them, I see the beauty ripple, and then the feedback I get, which is the feedback is about what's happening in the community, and it's nourishing their souls. So I think that's an essential, like, obviously bodies and like all levels of us need nourishment, but at the soul level, that's what I see as people are tuning into their own creativity and their own capacity for their own birthright to have insight into their deepest truth and their true nature, and they're digging deep. I feel the people that I'm in contact with digging deep and then being generous, and those little offerings are really sustaining at the level of soul and the emotional level. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, beautiful.
It strikes me what you're there's something also about being seen, so that there's that, like, the vulnerability of being in community, but actually being able to be raw, so that, like, the actual experience may not be, in quotes, beautiful, but actually in the collective, the experience of it is one of beauty, because there's like a rawness and a realness, and it's both by being able to receive, one of your poems, or being able to be witnessed in a piece of creative, work that I have put forward, like that actually is it. Both are water for the little seedling, that actually they attune to each other. It's like the sun on the plant. It's like the plant wants to be witnessed, or needs to somehow be witnessed, and that is actually part of the expression of growth. So I think that the community piece of it is really important. So going to your point, Jennifer, just that those, I think people are longing and yearning for really simple experiences of intimacy, and actually to just to be with and be seen by others. And that's something I can certainly relate to. I had an outdoor visit with a friend that I don't get to see very often. And I'm like, every time over the last little while where I'm actually like socializing kind of with friends outside, I can't believe how good I feel after. It's like, we're not doing anything fancy. We're like literally sitting outside, maybe having a drink, and I'm just like delighted by who I become something different just through that interaction, And so I do get that online in lots of beautiful ways. And I notice there is like the in-person nourishment that actually feels really, there's release and there's joy and there's a playfulness that kind of feels really available in that way.
I love the delight I can sense from you just in this moment of just almost this giddy delight of being in the just simple presence of a friend, and how renewing that can be. And that there's an intimacy there you feel with yourself. It's like remembering old parts of yourself, old ways we used to be together. And also just receiving someone else's love and care, and which can feel so intimate in a time of online worlds. And it reminds me just of a story that the other day in Whitehorse, we had a silent event, a DJ dance party where you can put on headphones and everybody's listening to the same music. But we were invited to this property and everyone spreads out. There was about 30 of us. But as you're saying, Lisa, this experience of needing to be seen, both as you were saying, Brooke, sort of an intimacy with yourself when you're actually able to tap into your own creativity. And in this case, it was movement. And no one can really see you. You're behind the spruce and the willows, even though there's very few leaves out right now in the Yukon. So you actually can. I saw this one woman at one point. It was this crazy drumming music, and she picked up 2 sticks, and she was just drumming. And I was experiencing the deep pleasure of witnessing someone move. And it wasn't voyeuristic, because we all knew we could sort of see each other through the non-leaves. And then my own experience of self-expression that felt so free, but it was absolutely both a release, as you're saying, Brooke, these themes you're exploring, a release. It was playful. And like, I kept looking up at the trees, just feeling such gratitude that I'm healthy, that just this simple piece that I get to use this body. I'm healthy, and I'm dancing with these pines and I missed dancing on a dance floor with real people, but it was just a beautiful example of that in community. And yet, as a community, we were renewing, listening to the same music, though all self-expressing in different ways. And the weight and the exhaustion I felt before the event and after were totally different. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I was reminded of, I've taken 2 kitchen dance parties, so often like in between Zoom calls. And we share a house. There's a family that lives on the other side. One day I had the music so loud, and I was getting text messages. Lisa, could you like turn it down a little? So now I've taken to using my AirPods, and then I can go really hard, and I can turn the music up loud and dance. You know, my dog is witnessing me, so that's. But just even the movement of my body in that way. I love that visual, that image of you in the forest, but there is like that, even the intimacy with myself of movement and relating in that way has become like really helpful in these long Zoom days. So
yeah, beautiful. So I love what you both have pointed to in our first conversation. You did this as well, is that sort of the darker layers or the shadow layers of beauty and what needs to be expressed, particularly in maybe the more grotesque aspects. So I'm wondering if you could shed some light on what do you mean by that, and why is that important, and how do you see that as beauty?
Do you want to answer first, Lisa, or do you want me to go?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think that it's there. Like, I think in a certain way, like just on a really simple level, the darkness and the difficulty and the grotesque is actually a part of my day-to-day experience. And therefore, to not include it is actually like a denial of reality as it's showing up before me. So that's fundamentally is because I experience anger and grief and like deep frustration and hurt and shame and, all of those emotions are actually a part of my experience. And I feel joy and bliss and playfulness and delight. Like they're two parts, and not even two. Sometimes they can co-arise in a way. And so that I think that the attending to those, what we might, the less preferable parts of ourselves or parts of our experience, they also are long to be seen and have the light shined on them, because they also have contained within them deep gifts as well. And so for me, it's easier to feel the bliss and the light and the good times, but there's something that the intimacy and the vulnerability that also comes when I put myself in relationship, both with my own darkness, but also like the darkness of as a parent. I need to relate to that in that part of my kids, or when it comes up in my relationship, I want to like lean into it, not away. And I think we're also in this moment where there's this collective darkness that, and certainly I feel that right now, like we're in it. It's like Oh, things are it's spring. It's pretty nice outside. We're kind of moving. The numbers in terms of COVID are getting better here in this particular moment, but that's not true globally. It's true in these little pockets. And so I also want to stay in relationship to like the suffering that's happening in India, or the conflict that's so heartbreaking in Israel and in Palestine. Those conflicts, whether it's COVID related or otherwise, it's like the part of it is actually about just being available to the fullness, and to see what's underneath, what actually might it offer, me individually, but us collectively, to actually feel in. And I think that the pathway through, or to the other side of the darkness, is through, not around. So I guess that's part of the why. That's where I would go.
Yeah, great. Brooke, I'm curious if you find for yourself examples of little rituals that help you stay in going through rather than around, particularly with beauty that is more grotesque, the life that's before us. So I'm just curious how you might offer some ideas about how we can be in ritualized spaces or forms in order to make sense of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has. I can definitely share some practices that help me, and what I notice is like the underbelly of them all, or the connective thread of them all, has to do with being willing to slow down and reorganize to what's actually true now. Like what I loved about what Lisa said is that she was relating to the whole, like, yes, the play and the joy and the bliss and the obvious beauty with my kids, with my partner, with my life, but also the gritty stuff underneath and mixed in. And also, if I can keep myself open to like a world-centric perspective, even in my most free and joyous moments, there's profound suffering happening in India, in Brazil, all over, really. And not to let that like pop the bubble of our joy, but to let everything have full dimension. And I remember our Zen teacher, we were all on this call actually, when she was teaching about beauty, and she said, beauty with a capital B, which I understand to be being in direct relationship with the truth and aliveness, the full spectrum of this moment. And so beauty with a capital B, that fullness of knowing there's suffering, knowing there's emergence, knowing there's a new baby, like being in relationship to the fullness in a direct way. She said that requires more of us. And what I like about that is that your whole question, Jen, it's like to be in relationship with conventional forms of beauty is fine, but it doesn't take much from me. I'm just kind of going through habits. It's easy. And in a way, maybe that's a good thing to do if I'm having a hard day, is like fill myself with easy forms of beauty. But I actually want to slow down and settle and dilate myself open to the full spectrum. It requires more of us. That's how I understand more of us. It requires me actually showing up to what's here that's never been here before. And can I be in relationship with the, like Lisa was saying, the magnolia flower, it's like it's here and then it's gone. What is right here that's not going to be here tomorrow and wasn't here yesterday? And can I just be available to praise that, whatever it is, however grotesque or, pretty it might be. And so, yeah, how? So I love your question, like how to ritualize that, how to, how to do that, because that's not always easy. Sometimes I spend all day avoiding slowing down to encounter what's here because I don't want to feel that,
Yeah, totally.
But I often think of Bayo Komolafe. He's a Nigerian, now living in India, teacher. He often uses this Yoruba proverb, which is the times are urgent, we must slow down. And Lisa and I have even used this as like a quote for our retreats. The times are urgent, we must slow down. And I loved that right away, but then I loved it more when he unpacked it and he said, it's not just that we have to slow down and do the same old stuff. No, the times are urgent. We have to slow down so that we feel more and get actually reorganized to do something different, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're not just slowing down to do the same things more slowly. We're slowing down to get reattuned to what's actually going on, not in a conceptual way, but actually just more available. So for me, it's just, it's meditation is a big one, is like giving myself enough time to just sit so that I can think my thoughts, but then eventually realize, oh, I can drop below that and then feel. And I usually end up at some point having some tears, but there's a settling, and it's like my whole being can then come online to start the day. I'll just leave it at that for now.
Yeah, and there can be such a tendency sometimes for me when you're answering a question to want to give a whole bunch of, option A to Z. And I love how, in a way, what you're just saying around slowing down is not to pack it in with even in your answer with a whole bunch of things. It's like, actually just distilling what is one of the most reliable ways of actually being able to have deep, intimate contact with yourself and open up such that you can open up and be more fully available to what is without having to do the runaround. So I love that you just offered one.
Yeah. When we were talking, me and my partner were talking about beauty, and he was reminding me of, years ago, he was taking a contemplative photography course, and we were on Vancouver Island. We were staying with a good friend of mine, and one of his activities, it was before he went back to the course that day, was to spend 45 minutes in the bathroom taking photos and actually having a practice of seeing the beauty. And they lived in this old house. It was a rental. It wasn't, it was not well kept up by the landlord. And she was horrified that he was going to be in her bathroom for 45 minutes, just like looking at all whatever she hadn't cleaned. And he emerged 45 minutes, like elated from, the beauty of the cracked tile and the ways that, the patterns and how they emerged. And so it's like the container. I think there's something about what we creating our containers for ourselves to actually do it, that slowing down. And so I think that's in a way what a meditation practice is. It's like here's your container and it's this long, and you sit and there you just actually, are inviting yourself into relationship with the moment as it's unfolding. And there's, I think, different containers that we can bring. And sometimes that's like a couple of deep breaths. And even for me, it might be like looking around, the room and actually seeing not just objects. Like for me, it's not, beauty doesn't just arise in objects, but actually arises in the way that I make contact with the object, or an experience, which might be about the way that you're both listening, the way that I feel received by the two of you. And so it's not just a thing to, like, beauty doesn't happen out there, but somehow for me, what I want to celebrate is like the enactment of beauty, like beauty as verb, beauty as like a quality that's like that actually emerges and that we can participate fully in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It reminds me of two things. One, this beautiful practice I've learned from another teacher, Cynthia Bourgeot, where she says, just soften the eyes, let soften the eyes such that everything falls on your eyes rather than your eyes grasping. And kind of take it all in. And when you do that, there's such a noticeable shift in the quality of my own being. It helps me more deeply listen. It helps my perception widen and take in not only just what's here, but all sort of a 360. And it reminds, I love that you said the beauty as a verb, because it's almost a reverence. It almost evokes for me, how can even this messy Zoom meeting that I'm in, or this clunky facilitation, or I'm leading this aspect of systems change, when you soften your gaze or you become more still, what becomes available just in the shift in your own perception and your ability to relate differently with everyone in the field. And my experience is that it can actually these are radical countercultural acts. And so coming back to the renewal piece, I love that there's an element of countercultural in the concept that you bring. It's an offering that isn't about just doing the same thing harder, faster, differently, but it's about how do you actually, settle into these rituals, settle into yourself, and provoke a new way in to being in relationship with self, other, and the world, to be more fully available, which is such a profound act of compassion and service and leadership, whether you're a creative artist, whether you're a poet, whether you're, in the social justice field. So I just, love that.
Awesome.
Deep breath.
As I was listening to you describe Cynthia Bourgeot's practice of softening the gaze, and I'm like such a novice at studying the nervous system, but I do believe that there is like a different function of our nervous system provoked when we are in that, like, it's almost like a predatory, pointed, outward kind of gaze, and then the kind of gaze that's soft, that takes in the periphery. And as you were describing it, I mean, I thought of, there's a Zen ancestor, Dogen Zenji, who he has a quote that basically says that to go out and approach the 10,000 things is delusion, whereas to receive the 10,000 things is enlightenment. That's not exactly it, but it's, and I wouldn't say that like going out is a bad thing, but there's something about that receptive gesture first and then moving from that. He defines that as enlightenment. So I thought of that quote, and then I also realized that I was kind of doing that while you were describing it, and I wondered if we wanted to just give your listeners a moment to just experience that. Like maybe we can take just a couple of moments. Maybe you could even guide it, Jennifer, since you've received it from Cynthia.
Sure.
A minute or so of that?
Sure. Let's do that. So maybe just find your seat and feel yourself rooted to the earth in whatever way that feels good to you. And you can keep your eyes open and just let your eyes fall back inside your head, or just soften your gaze such that you're not harshly looking or with focused attention looking at any one thing, but you're just letting the objects fall into your eyes. Maybe just start to look around the room wherever you are. Or if you're driving, maybe this is harder if you're listening to us, but just you can soften your gaze. See if you can notice any discernible shift inside you as you make this shift from focused attention to receptive eyes. You might notice that your breathing is different. I can tell even in this moment, my tone of voice is very different. It's lower than it might have been a few minutes ago. And notice if even form or objects appear different to you. Maybe they've lost or changed their interpretation or sense of meaning, even in this moment. You might even notice beauty. Maybe it feels more like a sensation or a verb, as Lisa was describing. And maybe just to conclude this practice, you can close your eyes and then rejoin us as we open our eyes. So, Lisa or Brooke, do you want to offer any insights or your experience in that last brief but powerful practice?
Yeah, the thing that came to mind for me was that I was like, oh my God, beauty, it isn't about the things, which I know, but I had this experience that as I make contact, as I experience the world or allow the world to come in, that's an act of beauty. Like that actually simply by witnessing everything as it is right now, that's actually beauty. There actually is, it's complete in a way, just as it is. And so the objects did become like, it wasn't the book and the pen and I actually experienced the color and the shades and the line and the placement, the way that the pen was on the page. And so that it was, there was something just about the experiencing and the witnessing of what's here as beauty itself.
Yeah, I love that. I love that beauty was that it wasn't about what, it was the act of receiving in this particular way. Yeah. And it brings me back to what Brooke said about just the fullness of what is, but it requires if our egos drop, out of even this micro moment, in this moment, or as leaders or as creatives, there's less grasping and there is that open reception. So if we're going to change things, if we can do it from this place, this felt place, I think a lot of things can shift. Yeah, Brooke, how about you?
Yeah, I love that. Noticing, Lisa, that it's like the act of beautifying by simply paying attention and receiving. And the one thing I'll add that I really noticed toward the end of it was how good it felt. My body, it felt really pleasurable. And I felt that release. Release, I'm realizing, can also be a micro thing. There can be the big moments, but I feel like what I was releasing was an agenda, and I was simply noticing. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being linear or directive or having an agenda or even being aggressive in certain moments where that's the right the most skillful move. But I think for me, it's about this as the ground, like a more receptive, available place as the ground out of which those other things can arise. And yeah, just I felt like an upwelling of love. And I was like, oh, wow, beauty is connected to love. That makes sense. And that there was pleasure there. And it was so easy to access. It didn't take a lot. It was just like, oh gosh, this table feels really good to look at.
And I think it likes to be looked at, right? Like it. Yeah.
It wants to be seen, just like the dancer in the woods.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Well, I think maybe this is a beautiful place to leave it for those listening, ending with a place of receptivity and a powerful practice that's so simple that you can bring into your day-to-day before you have to go have a tough conversation with your teen or a coworker, or you're holding something heavy and you need to discern something challenging. This is a beautiful practice just to bring this gesture of beauty and renewal that you both elegantly and so with so much curiosity and love do in your retreat, your different retreats, and especially the one coming up. So thank you both for your presence, for your friendship, for your wise teachings. And yeah, it's just such an honor to be here with you both.
Thanks so much for having us, Jennifer.
Yeah, so mutual. Thank you so much.